All right, hello. Uh, Once again, welcome back. My name's John. Uh, we're going through our Tails cards at the moment, and once again, I forgot to turn off this fan. So hold on a second. And there we go. You probably couldn't even hear the fan in the first place, but I could, and since I could, it was worth turning it off for me. Uh, so yeah, we're going through. For those of you who are just joining us, this is the second episode of Tails. Tails.com offers a pack of 150 life story cards that you can read or use as prompts to interview loved ones or whatever you want to do. I'm going through these and I'm saving them. The results of the discussion. It's not really a discussion because it's just me, but we are. I'm saving these off to Facebook, YouTube, and Patreon.com/knowing John, which I'll try to figure out how to give a link to. I'm terrible at editing anything. Uh, so there's that. But yeah, we're going to go through these so that in the future, one of these services will likely still be around, and my kids can read up on or listen to rather my answers to questions about me. So that's that. Yesterday we did how was I named? Who was I named after, and where was I born? If you care about those, then go watch that. Here are my. This won't take long. What were I don't know if you can see that. Let's try to get in the light. What were your parents like? All right, Dad. Uh, I have two parents. I realize there are people who have more than two parents. Everybody obviously has two biological parents, unless I've got that wrong. Uh, uh, my parents, J. Wesley Worrell the third, and Gail and Wessel. What were they like? My father's still with us as the time of this recording, so you could ask him. Uh, my father's a wonderful guy. He spent much of his career, during my lifetime, he spent much of his career as a general contractor, doing a lot of building decks and roofs and extensions to houses and things like that. He's always been very good with his hands. I remember his parents telling me that when he was a boy, he was that kid that could take things apart and put them together again, and you know, still have it work after it got put together. Anybody can take things apart and put them together again, but he could put it together again and it would work. It's different. When I was before I was born, he built himself a Triumph roadster, sort of a like a sports car kind of thing. You can look them up. It was a TR4 engine, I believe, and a TR3 body, and he put it together himself out of parts from junkyards. And if something wasn't there, he'd figure it out and go get something. And at one point, they had a problem where if you shifted at speed, it would sort of lurch off to one side. So he just jammed some shims in somewhere, and that fixed that. And he was that kind of he kind of jury rigged the car together, and it ended up being a beautiful, beautiful car, which is still in our family. My brother Jay and I tracked it down a number of years ago and brought it back into the family. Jay has it now I say up in Pennsylvania, except I'm also in Pennsylvania now, so it's no longer up. He's sort of off to the side, a little bit east of me. But as to what my parents were like, my father was the eldest of five children. Um, and I think when you're the oldest, uh, there's a certain responsibility that comes along with that. Whether it's explicit or inherent, you sort of default become the person who has to make some decisions about some things, and I think that Dad handled that very well when it came to dealings with his siblings and that sort of thing. I hold my father in very high respect. He was a conscientious objector during the Vietnam War. So Dad was born in '43. So he was in his 20s when the war was escalating in Vietnam, and as opposed to uh, there were a number of people in that time who chose to leave the country and go to Canada, or I've heard of some people who would fake bone spurs, or uh, you know things like that to try to get out of being drafted. My father didn't. He did it the honorable way. He was a conscientious objector. He did not believe in the violence. Didn't believe in the war, and rather than uh, hide from his uh, civic duty to follow the process, he followed the process. He openly went to the government and said, I don't believe in the war. And they said, okay, well, you're going to have to do alternative service. My father agreed and signed on with International Voluntary Services, uh, where he met a number of good friends. Uh, and he went to Vietnam and helped rebuild uh, infrastructure, schoolrooms and irrigation systems and the like for the Vietnamese who were having you know, their their whole nation was getting blown up, partly by themselves, a lot by the United States. Uh, it didn't really matter uh, to the villager who blew up their drinking supply. What mattered was they needed a drinking supply. And so Dad went with IVS to go help them out, and I was proud of him for that. It was dangerous. He heard bullets going past him. He got in. He was that he was close enough to the violence that he could have been easily killed. Uh, that was a very brave thing for him to do. He wasn't killed, and after that, he went and spent I think a year in Japan uh, teaching English to well, I suppose to the Japanese, and and then came back to the States, where he went to University of Virginia to study anthropology and I want to say oh he's gonna kill me for this. I'll get it before this is done. I have a bit of brain soup. Uh, uh, like touch of aphasia, I think they call it, where I have struggle with words. I get words mixed up sometimes and confused. Anthropology was one of them, and then the sociology, I think, or somewhere in the sociology realm would be the other half of what he was working on. At any rate, that's where he met my mother, University of Virginia. My mother was born in New York City. She was an only child, which is a vast difference from my father, who grew up with four siblings. My mother grew up with no siblings. My mother also grew up with no father in the picture. Her father left my grandmother when my mom was 3 years old. My mother always, she could never let go of her anger toward her father for having done that. I think that probably, she grew up as a result in a house uh, filled with women. Her mother was there. Her aunt Lillian lived there. Her grandmother Josephine Rogers lived there. Uh, it was a lot of women in that house, um, and no real love for her father Philip. Not that he necessarily deserved. I mean, everybody deserves love on some level. I don't know that he deserved a lot of love from those particular people. Uh, you know, when you when you start a family, you have an obligation to see that through. Uh, and from my mother's perspective, he certainly did not do that. And so she carried this anger toward her father as a chip on her shoulder, I think, through the rest of her life. She passed in 2009, at the age of 59, from heart failure. Um, but I do think that her anger toward her father uh, probably shaped a lot of her feelings toward my father. Uh, she then went on to have five boys. My brother Jay, myself, uh, my brothers Peter, Michael, and Daniel. I'm sure one of these cards are going to get into that. Uh, and so she was kind of there were a lot of sides of mom, and I think just depending on which part of her you engaged with, you got a very different version of Gail Worrell. I know that my adoptive sisters have very strong feelings about my mother. Very, love her very much, and with good reason. My mother took them in when they were struggling, having a difficult time, and she loved them and took care of them and helped raise them and give them guidance and was a good ally when they needed it. Um, she wasn't a particularly good ally for me. Uh, we had a very strained relationship, very difficult relationship, which maybe I'll get into in one of these cards. Not, but the question of what kind of person was she, or what was she like? She was very caring. She was very loving. She would donate her time uh, to serving the community, to serving the poor. She was Catholic. She spent a lot of time uh, donating her time to help Catholic causes, either as a pastoral counselor or working with uh, pregnant teenagers, working with the homeless, working with she worked with the LGBT community for a while, with an organization that escapes me, but it was a famous organization, and it would have been right in the beginning of the AIDS epidemic as well, that she was working with them. I may not remember the name of it, but my mother had an amazing sense of humor. She was very, very funny. And my father as well had an incredible sense of humor, still does. Uh, and I think that was probably something that drew them toward each other, was the fact that they're both very funny, uh, and humor will go a long way toward making for a good relationship, which I imagine at one point they had. Uh, Obviously, they separated when I was 13, and so it wasn't always didn't turn out to be a great relationship for the rest of their lives, but I could see where in the beginning they could have had some good times and some good laughter. Uh, so yeah, that's those are my parents. I think my father's still, uh, he and I have bonded over a number of things over the years. When I was little, Dad and I really bonded over soccer. That was our big thing. He would take me to watch the Washington Diplomats play at RFK. He was the coach of my brother's uh, soccer team, and he let me play on that team as well. And I ended up having playing on my own age group's team as well, which was coached by Malcolm Scully. But my father helped coach my team as well. And so I got to do lots of soccer stuff with Dad. We grew up watching the Washington Redskins together. There was a lot of sports that we bonded over, Dad and I. And I ended up being a huge Washington Redskins fan. Now I'm a Commanders fan, uh, and for people who can't get over the fact that the name changed, I don't know what to tell you. Probably, if the name of a football team is what determines whether or not you're happy, you probably need to do some work. That's not the most important thing in the world. Uh, Now, my father, on the other hand, jumped ship entirely well before the name change, became an Eagles fan. So we try not to hold that against him. Hey, Miguel, I love you too, man. Uh, we try not to hold the fact that he's an Eagles fan against him, but frankly, brought that on himself. So if you need to mock my father for being an Eagles fan, you have my permission. Um, you know, Fly, Eagles fly into a side of a building or whatever you did last year. Didn't work out too well. I think we just stole your offensive coordinator as well yesterday. I believe he's now a commander. Uh, all that aside, uh, yeah, both of my parents um, are service-minded people. Both of them very funny. Both of them very loving. Um, Not perfect people. Nobody is. Uh, but my father was there for me. I think I was a troubled teenager. I had a very difficult relationship with my mother. And I'm very grateful to my father for having allowed me to come get out of that environment and come live with him. I was not easy to get along with. Uh, I was not a good roommate. I was not a good housemate. Uh, I was not. I didn't pick up after myself very well, or at all. Um, I didn't respect other people's property or boundaries. Um, but uh, Dad was my dad, and he loved me, and he did his best to take care of me despite of the challenges that I posed. Um, I tried going and living with my grandfather for a little while, but I was just as big a problem for him as it was for anybody else. I think Grandpa told my dad at one point that I wasn't house trained, which I think was a fairly fair statement. Uh, yeah, it was difficult, and I'm very grateful to both my parents. I know that my mother did the best she could with me. Wishes she could have done better, but she had her own demons she was battling with. Uh, yeah, I love my parents. Um, Very grateful, and they're good people. So that's uh, as far as that question. What were your parents like? Well, that's what they were, awesome, and my father still is. Uh, you're welcome, Dad. By the way, if you want to adjust that, Will, now's the time to do it, buddy. Okay. Where are your parents from? My father was born in Walter Reed Hospital. Uh, his father was career military, so Dad grew up all over the place. I think I have a whole episode, an interview with him on Patreon.com /knowing John. I did a great it was great for me. I really enjoyed it. Interview with my father, where I got into his life. Where was he from, and what did he do? So, um, just to summarize, he spent his youth uh, growing up partly in the United States. Um, as a teenager, he's more time in I think in Germany, a little bit in England, a little bit in Italy, a little bit in Africa, Northern Africa. Bounced around a good bit before he started going to college. He went to Earlham College. Uh, I think the timeline was he went to uh, Earlham College in Indiana, and then went to Vietnam with IVS, and then Japan for a year, and then I think University of Virginia. But I don't know. Dad can correct me if I got that wrong, but we also have it all on record at Patreon.com. So stalk him pretty well. My mother was born in New York City. She grew up in Queens, in Flushing, Queens. Went to I believe she went to Jamaica College, and then went to my dog's very upset. Uh, and she went to Jamaica College before she went to St. John's, St. John's University, not St. John's College. Uh, Hold on one second. I'm going to turn off this baby monitor so that at least the dog barking doesn't repeat itself. So hold on one second. Okay. Uh, and then from there, after St. John's College, St. John's University, she went to University of Virginia in Charlottesville. Uh, so that's where Mom's from. Uh, how'd your parents meet? Uh, they met protesting the Vietnam War, is my understanding. Yeah, they were both at the University of Virginia, and they were in similar anti-war circles. And was must have been 1971. Uh, is my guess. Yeah, they met in college. That's a pretty easy one. Uh, you're gonna have to ask them if you want more detail on that. So I'm not gonna get involved in it because I don't know the answer. Uh, so we'll hit another one here. What were your grandparents like? Uh, this will probably be we're at the 24-minute mark, so I'll probably make this the last one for today. What were my grandparents like? Well, on my mother's side, I only met her father, Phil, one time. He was a successful businessman. With CMP Telephones and rose to a very prominent. He was a vice president of something or other. At CMP Fletcher. That's the dog. His name is Fletcher. Yeah, yeah. All right. Yes, you're here. Let's just get him. Come on, Fletch. Look, I know. I know. I see them also. They're out playing on the swings. Yes, I know. It's okay. Uh, so, uh, Phil had a terrible drinking problem. He was a. This would have been in the uh, 80s. Um, in the 80s, I think the people who were at that vice president level of large corporations in the United States, just in general, did a ton of drinking, and some of them could handle it, and some of them could not, and Phil could not, and eventually he died of cirrhosis of the liver when I was 13, which would have made about 80, 86, something like that. Uh, I met him one time or twice. I think once for lunch somewhere. Uh, I don't know. He was it's sort of a sad story, Phil. He lived in New Jersey, which makes it just that much sadder. Now, my grandmother on my mother's side, Grandma Aileen Wessel, she was born in, I believe, in the Bronx, uh, and she lived quite a while. She just passed away last year at the age of 90, maybe a little older. Um, Not entirely sure. Fletcher, you're be better than this. Uh, Graham was hilarious. She had a terrific sense of humor. Um, she had a biting sense of, like, she was like my mother and my grandmother both had very sharp senses of humor uh, that they could wield like cutlery, like they could chop you to pieces. Uh, oh, Fletcher, I know you'd like to go. There's nothing more you'd like than to go play with the children, but you can't go play with the children. You can't. Come here. You're okay. You're all right. You stay here with me. Uh, Graham, I hold a lot of respect for my grandmother Aileen. She was, as I mentioned, she was a single mother, uh, and she was a single mother in the 50s and the 60s when it was not common or socially acceptable to be a single mother. And she worked at a bank. She worked at Bayside Federal Bank for quite a number of years, 40 years. Um, she worked in a time when women were even more undervalued in the workplace than they are today. Um, Routinely, she would train up men who would then go on to become her boss and move up the ladder, and she had to teach them how to do that. Meanwhile, she stayed stuck at the bottom of the ladder because women were not considered uh, um, capable uh, retract that. I think that everybody knew that women were capable. Now, this is the 50s and the 60s. I wasn't there. But I think this idea that people didn't think that women could do anything is bullshit. I think that women did plenty during World War II to prove that they could take on any job that men could. I think it was just a greed thing. Men loved having the whole executive experience just to themselves. Because that executive experience included drinking scotch at noon, having gorgeous secretaries that you could grope without consequence. You could have affairs. You could fuck off and play golf. You could smoke cigars in the workplace. You could do anything. I haven't watched Mad Men, but from what I understand, it depicts pretty clearly what that lifestyle was like. I don't think that men didn't think that women could hold their own. I think they just didn't want them there because they'd ruin all the fun. I can't. Just the level of selfishness that was going on, not only during that time, but it continued for quite some time. It still goes on today. Quite a number of industries where it's there weren't even washrooms for women in the Senate until very recently. Why? Because there were no women senators. Why? Because they wreck all the fun. And it's very, very sad. I really, really, and so I'm proud of my grandmother for being a trailblazer in working as a single mother, working at a bank, and she was successful. That's anyway. That's my grandmother. What I know of her. My grandparents on my father's side, his mother, Carolyn Randall, and again you can get better information on my father's parents from him, or from the interview that I did with him, which is over on patreon.com/knowingjohn. But Carolyn Randall, I thought was a very interesting woman. She was a secretary, excuse me, at I think a printing company or something like that when she met my grandfather. It was the old story of her chair was busted and he fixed it, and that led to 5 children. Jesus, Fletcher, come on, man. All right, let's get you back into the other room and out of that. You want to go this way? All right, wherever you want to go, just come and go as you please. Quiet. Sorry about that. I'll never figure out how to raise animals or children, or myself. But he's free to come and go now, whine wherever he wants to. So yes, he fixed her chair and they fell in love. She was beautiful. In fact, I've got a photo. Couple of photos here of Grandma and Grandpa, and then this would have been her. back sometime in the 40s, late 40s, early 50s, somewhere in there. Look at her, golly molly, she's a beautiful woman. Uh, and Grandpa was no slouch either. Look at that. Uh, that's why I look like this. Uh, Actually, I look like this thanks to Americana Salon in Stewartstown, Pennsylvania. Shout out to John and the team there. They did me up. I thought I got a haircut yesterday, but my wife corrected me and let me know that I actually slept the whole day yesterday. I got a haircut 2 days ago. Uh, this is more recent. Both my grandma and grandpa have passed away. I think we decided the other day that grandpa must have passed in 2010 and grandma maybe 2011. Grandma was very artistic. She enjoyed sewing things. She enjoyed painting. My brothers have a lot of her paint. I don't have any of her artwork. I wish that I did. But she was a fantastic painter, in my opinion, making great use of vibrant colors. She loved beautiful colors. She loved purple, and she loved the way that purple looked against yellow, and she would make lots of sunsets. And when they lived together out in Keswick, Virginia, there were lots of beautiful sunsets and sunrises and horizons and so that was the sort of thing that she painted and she loved them. She loved birds. I don't think she painted birds, but I know that she really liked them. As I say that, a huge flock of birds just went over to the bird feeder over there. So hello, Grandma. And she's a very caring person. She was a dream interpreter. You could tell her what your dreams were, and she would tell you what they meant, and you could either believe her or not, one way or the other. She was the matriarch. She made sure, like when big family dinners were happening down in Charlottesville, she ran the show, and everybody, pitched in or got out of the way. It's another one of those weird things where if you were a woman, you were expected to go in the kitchen and help cook. And the funny thing is if you were a guy and you tried to go in and help, you just got yelled at and told to go away. So the guys didn't do a lot of offering to help because that was not what, no. Get out of my kitchen. All right. So the guys would, watch football or whatever. And then the good guys would then also help clean up afterward. That's the idea there. But then you had a handful. There was two breeds of guys. You had the guy Fletcher. I swear, man, I can't let you out there just to go bark at people. It's not cool. You were either the kind of guy that went and pitched in, or you were the kind of guy that stayed and sat on the couch watching more football. And I'm very ashamed to say that I was the kind of guy that sat and watched more football. It's definitely who I was. I regret that. I wish that I wasn't. I think I've gotten better over the years. But certainly I was a very self-centered teenager. Come on. Stop whining. Are they out? Are they done yet? They're not. They're still out there. When they're done, I will let you outside, okay? But I'm not going to let you outside just to go bark. It's not okay. People are working. You stay inside and whine if you must. But if you could not whine, that would be terrific. So that's, Grandpa J. Wesley Worrell Jr. was a prolific individual. He man, where do you even start with Grandpa? He was a kid from Media, Pennsylvania, who liked baseball. Had the nickname Dusty when he played ball. He was a left-handed pitcher. He went to Haverford College, and then he joined the army and went and fought. Well, he didn't do a lot of fighting, but he joined the army, and he was stationed in various places. I know he was in Africa for a while. He was in Northern Virginia for a while. I think he spent after the war. He spent a little time in Italy and Germany and England. When he was after World War II, he came back. He was living, I think, in Richmond, Vienna or Richmond. My father would know better, and he would probably chastise me for forgetting. But at any rate, he had a hand in he started becoming involved in the Quaker meeting, Richmond Friends meeting, and he helped start Charlottesville Friends meeting, and he also helped start Langley Hill meeting in Northern Virginia. He got called back into service. The Army wanted him to join up again for the when the Korean War started. And this was a conundrum for him because since he became familiar with Quakerism at Haverford College, and he'd become a pacifist. So he found himself torn between his pacifism versus the fact that he had made a commitment to the military. And between the two, are they done now? All right, they're done. I'm going to let you outside. Well, hold on. All right. Hush now. I want you to go out here just to bark at everybody, okay? Good boy. It's taking off like a rocket. All right, I think we're all right there. So the conundrum, pacifist, doesn't believe in war, and yet earlier in his life he had made a commitment to the military that he would serve when he was called. And so he was called. So now what? Well, I guess he decided that his word that he gave to the military superseded his subsequent pacifistic beliefs, and so he felt like he needed to honor his commitment. But he asked the military to not put him in any kind of a combat related role, because he just wasn't comfortable killing people. Now, what I know about the military is that every single job in the military is there to help kill people. You're either, if you're not shooting the gun or pressing the button or flying the plane yourself, you're supporting somebody who is, one way or the other. If you're running logistics, you're running. If you're cooking food at the barracks, you're doing it to make sure we've got soldiers fed and ready to go. There are not a lot of jobs in the military that don't, one way or the other, lead toward making sure we're able to kill people when we need to or want to. Uh, Fletcher is now upset that the children aren't out there. He'll probably be back in a minute. Come back in and whine. So Grandpa ended up, I think, running the military police, like investigative unit in Eritrea. Again, I'm sure my father will have a ton of corrections on these things. Then that war ended. Korea was over, and 1966 they settled down in Charlottesville, Virginia, and he resumed working with the Quakers. In fact, he started getting involved in the civil rights movement. My father recognized, particularly when it came to jail, incarceration in jails, that it was primarily young black men who were going to prison, and then they were forgotten about. When they came back out of prison, they weren't in any better shape than they were when they went in. It's supposed to be called a correctional facility. It wasn't doing any correcting. It just felt like the whole system was just designed to get black kids out of society for as long as possible. Fletcher! And of course, in the 60s, just like today, black people were being treated very differently in all walks of life. It's a little more pronounced, I think, probably back then. You don't see a lot of. All right, buddy, come on in. Oh, was that it? Go on. Nope. He's not coming in. He doesn't want to come in. He just wants to come scratch at the door. So, Grandpa worked with a fellow named Drury Brown in the Fletcher. I can't have him barking like that. I'm not very good at pausing these things. So you might have to bear with me while I wrangle this dog. He wants Liz and the kids to come back out. Lizzie is watching our neighbor Sarah and Donnie's children, or one of them anyway, across the way. Fletcher would very much like to see them. Grandpa and Drury Brown worked together in Charlottesville in the same building that, that's right, Amy. Fletcher has his own stories he wants to tell. They worked together in Drury Brown and my grandfather worked together in the building opposite or adjacent to the courthouse in Charlottesville. The building which eventually housed Kesmai Studios, where I worked many years later. All right, come on now. Come on. Hey, come here. Come on. Come on. You want a treat? We're working on it. Get this was talking. Uh, so they did. They worked in the same building that I worked in the late '90s. Good boy. No, he stayed. Gotcha. Trapped forever. I got him back in. Uh, and they worked on racial injustice problems. And that was in Charlottesville, Virginia, which, years and years and years later, became unfortunately known as the site of a terrific uh, clash between the folks who were in favor of taking down Confederate statues and the folks who were opposed to it, and that got violent and ended up taking the life of Heather Heyer. And that's unfortunately Charlottesville became known for that. But at any rate, yeah, it was a small world. They ended up they worked in the same building as me. My grandfather became kind of a big, huge, sort of a very well-known public figure in Charlottesville. He cast a large shadow. He wrote a book, which I don't know if I still have the copy of it. I may have. My intention was to send it to my sons in Singapore, so hopefully they have it. But I might have it. If I have it still, I want to get it over to them. He wrote a book on the history of Virginians, history of Quakers in Virginia, and he founded Offender Aid and Restoration, which is at the time was just based in Richmond, but it's now nationwide, and it's no longer called Offender Aid and Restoration. It's called something else, but it's still OAR. I don't think they wanted to use the term offender anymore. They wanted to change that to something different. But the idea was to help give incarcerated people some skills and a plan when they got out of prison, so that they had a way to turn their life around when they got out. Prison shouldn't be. Prison it makes sense for prison to be a punishment, and that's all well and good. But it shouldn't just be the first step toward a miserable life that can't be improved. Prison should be a wake-up call. It should be a motivating factor to help make sure that people who commit crimes, it should be the first step in a life of not committing crimes anymore. Shouldn't be it shouldn't be a place where they just go there over and over and over again because they don't have anything else that, you've been in prison. Well, you can't live here, can't work here, can't get this job, can't do these things. No, they've got to find a better path. And so Grandpa was instrumental in helping. In fact, I know several people. I have several friends who have benefited from the services of OAR while they were incarcerated, and I'll always be grateful. But to me, was Grandpa, and Grandpa was phenomenal. He used to give us a quarter if we were able to climb a tree higher than his head. Whenever he showed up, he had candy. He'd put his hands behind his back, and my brother Jay and I each had to choose a hand. And then each hand had a different piece of candy. They were the worst candy you could imagine. Zag nut, maybe, or a milk dud, or just some red hard candy. Or sometimes it was just like a dime. But he always made sure he had something. Uh, every time we saw him, and that made a big difference to me. Uh, Lots and lots of stories of doing things with Grandpa. We used to take adventure walks around the fields in Keswick. Uh, we used to. He taught. He used to. He used to take us, teach us how to drive his car. In there's a golf course in Keswick that, at the time when I was in my early teens, it was closed. So he used to take us there and put us behind the wheel of his car, and we'd drive around. And he would sleep. He'd fall asleep while we were driving. Uh, yeah, Grandpa. I loved him very much, and so did everybody else. I think who met him. He did. He cast a long shadow, and that's one of the reasons why I'm particularly proud of my father. Is because when your father is sort of a folk hero, it can be very intimidating. It can be difficult to get your own name out there and really find your own identity and establish who you are. When the whole community has these expectations of who you should be based on who your father was, especially he gives you, if you have the same name as this guy, right? Uh, you know, Grandpa was, I mean, trying to live up to that is very difficult. I can't live up to who Grandpa was. If anybody expected me to, they'd be sadly disappointed. I can't do that. I don't know anybody who could. So I think my father found his own way as an author, as a volunteer, as a contributor to the community. And I think that my father casts a fairly long shadow of his own. Especially now that there are fewer and fewer people around who 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 automatically remember his father. Uh, it's good to see you, Amy. You can listen to this as much as you like whenever you want. Love you. Uh, so I'm proud of you, Dad, for um, making the name Jay Worrell your own. And for that matter, I'm proud of my brother as well, Jay, who I imagine I'll get into here in one of these tales. I'm sure it's gonna ask me about my brothers, and my brother Jay has done an amazing job, I think, with his own charity work. It was through Habitat for Humanity for a while, and now is running a massive collection of food banks, the largest in Pennsylvania, I think. I'll have to make sure I look it up and understand better what he's done. I don't talk to him so much anymore, but I'm very proud of him. And but yeah, that's probably enough for today. I'm gonna let you guys get back to your stuff, and I'm sorry if I'm not wildly entertaining. I'm not pranking my wife or oh, there goes the dog's tails over. I'm not chucking Mentos into soda bottles. I'm not able to play symphonies on rubber bands through my nose or whatever it is you're supposed to do on the internet these days. Uh, but I did want to get these recordings done so that my kids will understand a little bit about where they come from. So listen, love you all. Good to see you. I'll figure out how to get this stuff posted to wherever it is, and if you'd like to support me, here's the phone. And no, I don't know who that was, but they're not getting answered. If you'd like to support me, patreon.com/knowingjohn allows you to send a one-time or schedule contributions. I have stage 4 cancer. I'm not able to work anymore. Cancer is very expensive. We're going through some insurance challenges coming up here. So donations would be very welcome. I'm also available at john.world@paypal.com. But thank you very much for listening, and I'll be putting more of these together. So long. Love you.